Good morning, Bimblers. And you join me outside of Deansgate Station for a very special Bimble. It's a bit different today. We're going to Bimble to one place and talk about multiple people. We're going to Southern Cemetery because we're so cheerful. So let's stop messing about and let's Bimble.
On your mind, are you listening? You still won't figure it out. Figure it. With all your thoughts on your mind all the time, oh, it's deafening. You still won't figure it out. Figure it. With a simple frame of mind, time. You can protest all you like. We both know, with goodwill on your side and a little time, you can have just what you like. We both know things could be easy if you just try. Better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. Things could be easy if you just try. I know you heard every word, every line, but you're missing it. Why won't you figure it out? Figure it. I know I talk really loud. Heard, oh, it's deafening. You still won't figure it out. Figure it. With a simple frame of mind and a little time, you can protest all you like. We both know, with goodwill on your side, little time, you can have just what you like. We both know it's easy if you just try. It's better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. It's easy if you just try. Time. You can protest all you like. We both know, with goodwill on your side and a little time, you can have just what you like. We both know it's easy if you just try. Better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. It's easy if you just try. It's easy if you just try. Better off this time. Have it your own way if you like.
And so, Bimblers, we reach Southern Cemetery, a place that we've bimbled to in the past, in the Morrissey's Manchester Bimbles, episode 1, in case you want to watch. But we've got some unfinished Morrissey's Manchester business here, because there's a member of the Smiths that's buried here now. Apparently, according to the map, he's in the non-conformist section, B, which is over there, by where that chap's using the leaf blower. That's Bimble. There you go, Bimblers. Under a shady tree, the bass player from the Smiths, Andy Rourke. He died in May of 2023. He used to live over in America, but they brought him back to Manchester to be buried. And he's in good company here in Nonconformist Section B, because a few doors down is Tony Wilson, you know, who started Factory Records and was on Grenades Tonight, the one from 24 Hour Party People. As another Smiths-related fact to Southern Cemetery, all the typefaces they use, not the fonts. Fonts aren't actually called fonts, they're supposed to be called typefaces. It was Steve Jobs at Apple that started calling them fonts. A font is whether it's italic or bold. It's not the actual typeface, it's just the style of the typeface. But anyway, all the typefaces they use for Southern Cemetery are the same typeface that they used on Strange Ways Here We Come by the Smiths, their last album. But we're getting off topic. We're here to see some graves, not talk about fonts and typefaces. I was actually lucky enough to meet Andy Rourke a couple of times. He did some DJing at a club that I used to do sound at. And I also watched him perform live at the Par Hall in Warrington. He played bass for Ian Brown. Got him free for that, someone smuggled me in. But anyway, that's enough about music. What about football? Over here in Nonconformist Section A of Southern Cemetery, you'll find a rather elaborate grave to a John Henry Davies. He's the man that changed Newton Heath, Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Football Club into Manchester United. That's right, they didn't always play at Old Trafford. They didn't always date Spice Girls, and they didn't always drive around in Aston Martins. They weren't even the only football club to play for that railway company. They were called Newton Heath, Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Football Club to differentiate themselves from the other football club, Newton Heath Loco, the fellas that worked in the locomotive department. In 1878, the lads from the carriage and wagon department were permitted to start a football team. But by 1902, they were a bit in debt, to the tune of £2,670. That's about £275,000 in today's money. In steps John Henry Davies, with another 3 chaps, who all invested £500 each, on the condition that they stopped being called Newton Heath, Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Football Club, and just started being called Manchester United. And they went down in history, didn't they? Rather a sound investment by Mr. Davies. He made all of his dosh brewing beer, so he was rather perfect for investing in a football club. He died in 1927 at his home in Llandudno, and he wasn't even from Manchester, he was from Staffordshire. And there's another chap here in Southern Cemetery that has a lot to do with Manchester United, that was from Scotland. Let's bimble. Over in Roman Catholic Section G, as shared by Rob Gretton, the manager of Joy Division in New Order, you'll find the grave of Sir Matt Busby. Sir Alexander Matthew Busby was born in Orbiston in Scotland in 1909. He was the son of a coal miner, and in fact, he followed his father down into the pits before becoming a professional footballer. In 1928, he started playing for Manchester City, and even worse than that, in 1936, he was playing for Liverpool. World War II broke out, and obviously he wasn't playing too much football. But in 1944, when the war was over, he went back to Liverpool and became the head coach. He wasn't very happy with the level of control he had, but he was offered the position of the head honcho of Manchester United. He did rather well. According to my big book of Bimble, they were the league runners-up in 1947, 48, 49 and 51, and they won the league in 1952, plus winning the FA Cup in 1948. A new younger side was forming at Manchester United, and they were known as the Busby Babes. In 1958, those Busby Babes went over into Europe to play in the European Cup. They were playing against a side called Red Star Belgrade. On the way back, the plane stopped to refuel in Munich, but there was rather adverse weather conditions. The plane failed to take off twice, and on the third attempt, it was fatal. It slid down the runway on a sheet of ice, hitting the fence at the end of the runway. 23 people were killed on that plane, 8 of which were the Busby Babes. There was another 3 that were employees for Manchester United, and the rest were all journalists and employees of the airline. So Matt survived along with 9 other Manchester United players. I think one of them was Bobby Charlton. So Matt went on to manage Manchester United up until 1969, but that didn't last for very long. He came back in 1970 and 1971. He won the league 5 times and the FA Cup twice, along with winning the European Cup once as well. He had it down to a fine art. But speaking of fine art, let's bimble. And he painted matchstock men and matchstock cats and dogs. The grave of Stephen Lawrence Lowry, born in Stretford, moving to Pendlebury in his 20s. He never married, so he lived with his parents for the whole of their lives. And he looked after his mother until 1939 when she died. He doesn't even get top billing on the grave. His mum and dad are on the front of the grave. He's just listed on the side. After his mother died, their rented house in Pendlebury got into a little bit of a state. He was actually evicted in 1948. Oddly, at that point, he found that he had quite a bit of money in the bank, so he bought himself a house in Cheshire, in a place called Mottram. But he didn't like it very much. I think he preferred Pendlebury. It was odd that they used to rent a house, considering he had all of his money in the bank. But I think he liked it. He was actually a rent collector. He used to work for an estate agent called Pall Mall Properties. They're still going today. He worked there until 1952 when he retired to concentrate on his pictures. He didn't really get much recognition while his mother was alive, which was a shame because she thought he was wasting his time. Now look at him. He became an official war artist during the Second World War, and he was the official artist of the Queen's coronation in 1953. Did a nice painting of Buckingham Palace with all the people outside waiting for it to go past in a carriage. I think he's a little bit misunderstood. We think about him as a little bit chocolate box with his matched-up men and matched-up cats and dogs. But his portraits are much more like Lucian Freud, and I like his seascapes, his landscapes, and of course his pictures of churches. You know how much I like a church, Bimblers. After he died in 1976, they found some of his artwork in his house, which was a little bit risque. Futuristic drawings of women with big bosoms, in sort of futuristic sadomasochistic clothes, a little bit like Lady Gaga. Was he a secret masochist? I mean, whatever floats your boat. Speaking of floating your boat, let's bimble. We've come back to Section A, Bimblers, which I thought was the nonconformist section, but I think it's just the rich lad section. Oddly, a lot of Victorian engineers seem to come from County Durham, and Daniel Adamson was no exception. His father was the landlord of the Grey Horse pub in Shildon in County Durham. And when he was 13, Daniel Adamson went to work for a chap called Timothy Hackworth. Timothy Hackworth was one of the engineers on the Stockton and Darlington Railway. Lest we forget that Big George Stephenson was one of the engineers on that railway as well. It was kind of his idea. And he was from County Durham as well. In 1851, Daniel Adamson set himself up a small ironworks in a place called Newton. Not Newton where I live, but Newton near Hyde in Tameside. He used to make boilers there with his patented anti-collapsive flange seams. He became quite a wealthy man. Hence why he's buried in the rich lads section here at Southern Cemetery. But the reason why we've heard of Daniel Adamson is because he was an early champion of the Manchester Ship Canal. In fact, the first meeting for the Manchester Ship Canal was held at his house in Didsbury. There were 68 influential people there, all the mayors of all the towns that the Manchester Ship Canal would affect: Widnes, Runcorn, Earlham, Warrington, as well as the chief engineer for the Manchester Ship Canal, Edward Leader Williams. Mr. Adamson was made chairman of the board of the Manchester Ship Canal Company, but unfortunately, he never seen it come to be. He died on the 13th of January, 1890, and the canal didn't open until 1894. Queen Victoria opened it. But he was so influential in the building of that ship canal that they named a boat after him, the Daniel Adamson, the one that lives in Frodsham. We've bimbled to it before. But there's another industrialist here in Southern Cemetery that was also very influential. In fact, he invested in the Manchester Ship Canal Company. He's just over there. We have to walk past Andy Rourke again. Let's bimble. Nonconformist Section E, Bimblers. Just down from Andy Rourke and Tony Wilson, you'll find the tomb of John Rylands. John Rylands was born in Parr in St Helens, right on my family patch. John's father, Joseph, owned a draper's in St Helens, and that's where John showed his shrewdness for business. Him and his two brothers expanded the business into wholesale and also into property. They had a dye works and a bleach works, and they used to make linen and calico in Gingham. They had 17 mills and 15,000 employees. So when his father and his brothers died, he inherited the lot, which made him a very wealthy man. But he didn't keep it all to himself. He invested it. He invested £50,000 into the Manchester Ship Canal Company. That's about £5 million. And when they needed more money, he invested even further. You see, he wanted to get that cotton into Manchester, down the ship canal. making his business even bigger. He did give to charity though, and it's down to him that Stretford got a public baths, a town hall and a library. Very generous people in St Helens. Anyway, Bimblers, to our final portage here at Southern Cemetery. Let's bimble. We've come to the Jewish section of Southern Cemetery to visit the grave of Joseph Sunlight. We've had a fella from Staffordshire, a Scottish fella that used to manage Man United, a fella from County Durham, a lad from St Helens, and two lads from Manchester, that's LS Lowry and Andy Rourke. But Joseph Sunlight takes the biscuit. He was from Belarus. His real surname wasn't Sunlight, it was Shlimshlevich. Probably not pronouncing that right. His family fled Belarus to avoid conscription into the Russian army, and they found their way here to Manchester. They liked the sound of the place Port Sunlight, so they adopted that as their surname. Port Sunlight being the model village that William Lever set up for his soap making factory. Joseph was a man after my own heart, an architect. He had a practice on St Anne's Square here in Manchester. According to himself, he designed over 1,000 houses in Prestwich, and by the time he was 30, he designed over £1 million worth of property. In 1923, he became the MP for Shrewsbury, but that didn't last very long. They had another election the next year and he got beat. But one of his main focus points was the standardisation of British bricks. He said that would make the building of council houses much cheaper and much faster. Because if they had standardised bricks, they could have standardised designs. Sounds like a nice fella. His most famous building was on Key Street in Deansgate. That's Sunlight House. At the time it was built in 1932, it was the tallest building in Manchester, 14 stories. He didn't just design it, he owned it and financed it himself. And he'd been over to New York to the Empire State Building, and he wanted to build a skyscraper in Manchester, next door to Sunlight House. That would have been 33 stories tall. But Manchester Council said no. Do you know that Joseph Sunlight visited Sunlight House every day of his life up until 3 months before he died? He died in 1978, aged 89. He had £5.5 million in the bank, and Sunlight House was valued at £4 million. But he wasn't shy about spending his money. Apparently he had a weakness for the horses. Apparently on one weekend at Ascot, he lost £15,000 in one day. But he was quite lucky, because the next day, he won it all back. He sounds like a very interesting fella. Very interesting fella, buried in a very interesting cemetery.